Picture this. A routine traffic stop turns into an unforgettable showdown when a power-hungry officer lets her authority go to her head. In this episode of ID Refusal, we dive into a tense encounter where one driver's calm defiance exposes the extreme behavior of a female officer on a power trip. It starts with a simple request for identification, but when the driver questions his rights, the situation takes a sharp turn. The officer's escalating demands and erratic behavior leave everyone wondering, how far will this go? What should have been a routine exchange becomes a jaw-dropping clash of rights, authority, and composure. As tensions rise, the driver stands firm, challenging her every move, while the officer's reaction goes from intense to downright shocking. You won't believe what happens next in this story of rights versus control. Stay tuned to witness the drama unfold and see how it all plays out. Let's get into it. As the video rolls on, we see the driver sitting calmly, his hands visible on the steering wheel, maintaining a steady voice despite the officer's growing impatience. He politely asks the question so many wonder in these situations. Am I being detained, or am I free to go? It's a simple inquiry, but it sets off a chain reaction. The officer's demeanor shifts, her frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. Instead of answering, she doubles down, insisting on compliance without offering a clear explanation. This isn't her first traffic stop, but something about this driver's confidence seems to rattle her. Meanwhile, viewers can't help but wonder, what's the backstory here? Is she under pressure, or is this a glimpse of a deeper problem? The driver, unwavering and calm, is clearly familiar with his rights, refusing to be intimidated. The tension in the air is almost tangible, and you can feel the moment inching closer to a boiling point. What happens next is as unpredictable as it is unsettling. The officer, now visibly irritated, steps closer to the driver's window, her tone growing sharper with every word. She insists again that he hand over his ID, but the driver doesn't flinch. Instead, he calmly states his understanding of the law, citing his rights and asking for clarification about the stop. This only seems to add fuel to the fire. The officer's frustration turns into thinly veiled anger as she starts raising her voice, attempting to exert control over the situation. Meanwhile, passers-by begin to notice the growing commotion. A few slow down to watch, their curious glances adding another layer of tension to the scene. The driver, aware of the attention, remains composed, his words deliberate and steady. He knows the importance of standing his ground, but also of not escalating the situation further. The officer, however, seems torn between enforcing her authority and navigating the mounting pressure of being in the spotlight. The power dynamic is shifting, and it's clear this standoff is far from over. The officer takes a step back, her hand hovering near her radio as she contemplates her next move. The tension is electric, each moment stretching longer than the last. The driver remains steadfast, his calm demeanor now a quiet defiance that seems to challenge her every word. The officer's voice sharpens as she warns him again, her authority hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Suddenly, backup arrives. Another patrol car pulls up, its flashing lights adding to the charged atmosphere. A second officer steps out, taking in the scene with cautious eyes. The driver glances toward the new arrival, but stays focused, repeating his simple question, "Am I being detained?" The new officer exchanges a quick, tense conversation with the first, their words inaudible of the low hum of the car engines. It's clear the situation is reaching a tipping point. The first officer's frustration is now mixed with uncertainty, and the driver's unwavering stance raises the stakes even higher. All eyes are locked on what's about to happen next. The second officer approaches the driver's window, his demeanor calmer but no less firm. He asks for the driver's version of events, listening carefully as the driver recounts the encounter in measured tones. The first officer stands nearby, arms crossed, her frustration barely concealed as she watches the exchange. It's a momentary shift, a glimmer of hope that cooler heads might prevail. But just as the tension begins to ease, things take an unexpected turn. The first officer suddenly steps forward, interrupting the conversation. Her voice is sharper now, accusing the driver of obstructing justice. The second officer glances at her, visibly caught off guard by her escalation. The dynamic between the two officers becomes its own conflict, adding another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. The driver, meanwhile, remains calm but cautious, clearly aware that the situation is spiraling. As the exchange intensifies, the second officer appears torn. Should he back his partner or intervene? The air grows heavier with uncertainty, leaving everyone wondering how this standoff will end. The second officer takes a deep breath, stepping between his partner and the driver in a visible attempt to de-escalate. He calmly asks the driver to remain patient while he assesses the situation. The first officer, however, isn't backing down. Her frustration boils over as she insists the driver is being non-compliant, her voice growing louder and more demanding. The tension between the officers becomes impossible to ignore, and for a moment, it seems like their conflict might overshadow the original encounter. Then the unexpected happens. A passerby, who had been recording everything from a distance, steps forward cautiously and speaks up. "Excuse me, officers, but I think you might want to check this out," they say, holding up their phone. The second officer pauses, clearly conflicted, but ultimately decides to take a look. As the video plays, it reveals the entire incident from an outside perspective, including moments where the first officer's behavior seemed disproportionate and erratic. The revelation shifts the tone entirely. The second officer, visibly uncomfortable, turns to his partner and quietly suggests they step aside for a private discussion. After a tense exchange, the first officer reluctantly returns to the driver, her tone subdued. She hands back his documents, mutters a terse acknowledgement, and the driver is finally allowed to leave. But as the patrol cars drive off, the impact of the encounter lingers, leaving the audience questioning how often authority is pushed too far, and how vital it is to stand firm in knowing your rights. As the driver pulls away, the camera lingers on his calm expression, a stark contrast to the chaos of moments before. It's clear he never set out to cause trouble. He simply wanted to assert his rights in a situation that had spiraled out of control. The second officer watches from his patrol car, visibly deep in thought, while the first officer avoids eye contact, her earlier intensity now replaced with quiet frustration. This encounter leaves plenty to reflect on. It's a reminder of how quickly things can escalate when authority is unchecked, but it also shows the power of staying composed under pressure. For the driver, standing firm paid off, but it's not always easy to challenge authority in the moment. The presence of witnesses and cameras played a critical role in keeping things from going further, underscoring the importance of accountability. As the scene fades, viewers are left with one lingering question: how often does this happen when no one is watching? The story may be over, but the message stays with you.